And good afternoon, friends, colleagues, EU and ASEAN alumni and students. Good afternoon from Jakarta, and thank you for joining us for this session of what's been an excellent ASEAN EU higher education fair so far. My name is Darren McDermott. I'm the team leader of the EU Support to Higher Education in the ASEAN Region Programme, or SHARE programme for short. And I'd like to thank colleagues from the EU delegation, the EU POP project, for inviting us to present SHARE's work on intra-ASEAN virtual exchange and collaborative online international learning, or VE COIL for short. The SHARE programme, which was launched in 2015 as the EU's flagship higher education programme with ASEAN, was originally conceived as a mechanism for ASEAN, EU and intra-ASEAN credit-bearing physical student mobility, supported by quality assurance and qualifications frameworks. And the SHARE Consortium is comprised of the British Council, the Day, ENQA and NOFIC. And as the programme concludes at the end of 2022, or at least this phase of the programme, we aim to catalyse the transfer of ownership of programme outcomes to regional entities, ASEAN entities, Southeast Asian entities, and nominated organisations. And this will be embedded within sustainable, regionally led structures and processes. And if you were on the opening session, you may have heard reference by Director Rodora Babaran and subsequently Assistant Director Dr. Roger Chow. The subsequent presentation that he gave, they referenced our work on sustainability of ASEAN higher education cooperation and how that took a big step forward last week with the launch of the roadmap on the ASEAN higher education space 2025 and its implementation plan. And this was launched at the 15th SHARE Policy Dialogue in Hanoi, Vietnam on July 27th. So we'd encourage you to read more about what this means for the region and for you as students on the EU and ASEAN and SHARE websites. And I believe colleagues will be sharing the links to those stories in the chat in due course. In 2020, the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic made us reconsider our approach to our work. Remember, we had been functioning as a program or running as a program since 2015. So being a student mobility program that suddenly couldn't implement mobility was a very big challenge for us. So as a program, we engaged in comprehensive consultations with the region's higher education organizations, the universities, and the group that was perhaps most affected by the pandemic, higher education students themselves, like you. And through these consultations, we adapted our project and since then have been able to further explore digital transformation opportunities within the region's higher education community. The higher education community in Southeast Asia, including students, have proved themselves adaptable and capable of embracing this new context over the last number of years. In-person policy dialogues and meetings like this have become online and hybrid events, and that allows us reach far larger audiences. International education programs have incorporated virtual modalities, virtual exchange, collaborative online international learning. And these engage students, but also academic and international relations officers in the formulation of new learning collaborations between Southeast Asian universities. This is an approach that isn't just for the pandemic, but it's entirely complementary with physical mobility when it returns in the region at scale. SHARE has been working on transforming a paper-based system of credit transfer between Southeast Asian institutions into a paperless, verifiable, digitally signed system held in the cloud or a student's digital wallet. Qualifications frameworks have provided recognition for shorter units of learning accredited by micro-credentials consistent with lifelong learning frameworks. Communities of practice of academics, staff, and students who gather over Zoom, Teams, WhatsApp groups, and again in person, are shaping the future of teaching and learning at institutions across the region. And all the while, quality assurance frameworks are keeping pace with these changes, ensuring quality in the provision of higher education, whatever the modality. Access and inclusion initiatives have become central to the internationalization agenda. And the roadmap on the ASEAN higher education space envisages this resilient, sustainable, common space of higher education engagement across Southeast Asia. This will allow for greater harmonization and internationalization of the region's higher education systems. And this is reflective of a new reality for education worldwide that proposes adaptive and sustainable approaches in responding to our changing context. The EU support to higher education in the ASEAN region has been proud to have contributed to this process of establishing a working group on the ASEAN higher education mobility space and agreeing the roadmap with regional stakeholders over the past 2 years. And as we enter the final phase of our program, we look forward to working concertedly with our partners across the region to ensure the ownership and sustainability of the roadmap and its implementation plan. On behalf of the SHARE program, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all of our partners, colleagues at the ASEAN Secretariat, the EU Delegation to ASEAN, CEMEO RIHED, the ASEAN University Network, UNESCO, the Asia-Europe Foundation, Euraccess ASEAN, too many to mention in many ways, but most of all to students and to you who have remained engaged, remained involved in higher education initiatives, whatever the modality. I really hope you enjoy learning more about the opportunities and options for further international studies available in ASEAN and in Europe, and can make the most of what I can promise you will be a life-changing experience wherever you choose to study. So allow me now to hand over to my colleague and program manager for the SHARE scholarship and credit transfer components of the SHARE program, Mr. Arif Maulana, to tell you more about virtual exchange and COIL opportunities, and also introduce Kevin, the SHARE program alumnus who's joining us today. So many thanks to you all. Many thanks, Arif and Kevin, and over to you.
Thank you, Darren. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Arif Maulana. I'm the program manager for EU SHARE. I'm responsible for the student mobility part of the program, which includes the scholarship and also the credit transfer system. For our presentation, our joint presentation today, I will give you a brief introduction of SHARE and its work, particularly on the student mobility, focusing on our efforts for digital transformation in the region, which includes the virtual exchange and collaborative online international learning or mobility, followed by testimonial from one of our alumni of the VE COIL program, Mr. Kevin Eryogia. He is from Ict University. Hello, Kevin. Nice to have you here. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put your questions in the chat box. We will try to get to your questions as quickly as possible. If there are more questions, do remember that we still have another session at 4 o'clock this afternoon until 6. We have a booth ready. The link will be provided to you in the chat box, and it will be managed by my colleague, Ms. Lydia, who will be managing the booth from 4 o'clock to 6 to answer all of your questions. Okay, so let's start. Next slide, please. So SHARE's targeted impact is to support mutual recognition, student mobility, and equal opportunities. This includes female students and people with disabilities among higher education institutions in the region, and strengthen people-to-people connectivity. Next slide. While physical mobility remains central to the SHARE program as an internationalization modality, the context within SHARE is currently operating has greatly changed. We all are aware of the a lot of restrictions due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The restrictions going abroad has been put into place. This requires new ways of adapting to the situation. While previously, back in 2015 up to 2019, we were active in physical mobility. When the pandemic strikes in 2020, we had to shift the way we operate. So we tried to use the online learning methodologies and blended learning modalities such as virtual exchange and collaborative online international learning. These are the areas that we are focused on in the extension phase of SHARE. These forms of digital transformations are an important tool for higher education institution, not only as the primary form of student exchange during this period, but also as a complementary aspect to the physical mobility. So when physical mobility becomes available again, we can have sort of a hybrid mobility. This can run in both physical and virtual, and can cater a lot more students in the region. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Lydia. Right. As I mentioned, the virtual exchange and collaborative online international learning for institutional students provides more opportunities for students to participate in taking courses abroad. While not everyone keen on going abroad, some students prefer to stay at home, but still get the benefits of taking courses from another universities, for example, or people that would not be able to travel, for example. These are modalities that they can explore. And we try to make this available and ensuring that the courses that is offered, the credits that they earned from those courses can be used for their home universities to ensure that their studies will not be hindered by taking these programs. Right. So by leveraging on technologies, not just for the scholarships, for the mobility, for example, we also try to shift it. We also try to digitalize the process of the scholarship, not just for the courses, but also for the credits that you receive. Digitalized credit transfer process through a single online platform would benefit universities and students because it provides best practices uh, uh, in credit transfer processes. So it will be online system, paperless, no need to upload paper-based forms into these platforms to ensure that the courses that you take, the credits that you earn are fully recorded. For student, it gives a transparent process of credit transfer, and also it gives a greater control of the data that they have received, and to ensure that whatever they took, whatever they earned from the studies, from the courses, can be shared with other higher education institutions or to future employers once they graduated. Next slide, please. So we start the SHARE extension or SHARE 2 early in February 2020. We adapted to use virtual exchange and collaborative online international learning. So far, we have conducted about 3 batches since then. Batch 8, the third batch is currently ongoing. So far, we have around, it's closer to 1,300 awardees has been given. So about 1,300 students in the regions have benefited from this. It was organized jointly by 9 universities and who created the courses, and supported by the share partner universities, the 33 share partner universities, to ensure that the program can run smoothly. We also plan to have another batch later on, just before the end of SHARE. It's going to be a batch 9. This will start somewhere in October and until the end of November, so about 2 months period. And this next batch is actually very special because this is the pilot batch where we are introducing our newly developed uh, ASEAN Virtual Exchange and Collaborative Online International Learning Platform, or AVEC platform. This platform serves as a platform for universities, lecturers, and international administrators to mix and match up courses. They can discuss about collaborative courses that they want to create. So it can be 2 universities, 3 or 4, as many as they possibly can, to create new courses or to combine their courses to cater for their students and other students in the region who might be interested to take those classes, for example. So one of the benefits of COIL is actually not just the students' benefits, but the lecturers also uh, connect with each other. They have to speak to one another and decide who's going to teach what, who's going to deliver what, how are we going to get the students to work together, for example. It's a little bit more complex than the average physical mobility, for example. So it does give more benefits as a whole if we compare it to the physical mobility. And as and during these 3 batches that we've tried out 6, 7, and 8, it works. And about 1,300 students have already benefited. Around 60 to 62 lecturers participated under the Share Partner Universities cooperation. Next slide, please. So how does the COIL application process starts? We have the AVEC platform now for batch 9. Universities join in, they introduce themselves, they prepare courses that they are interested to work on. If they can also reach out to other universities, and once a dialogue is made, they can have an internal discussion of how the course will go, and they will provide we will provide them with an application form where they can uh, put all of the instructions, what they want to do, and submit their application to us for the COIL courses. Those applications will be reviewed by our share experts for virtual exchange and collaborative online international learning. And if it's approved, we will provide them with all the necessary administration to ensure that all of their students will get the scholarship to take part in the virtual exchange and COIL courses. So right now, the application for VE COIL for batch 9 that is intended to be implemented in October is already open. And we invite universities to take part in our inauguration of the AVEC platform mid-August this year, so about 2 weeks from now, and meet with other universities and see where they can collaborate and create new courses together. Next slide, please. For the students, we provide a lot of benefits to ensure that their studies is as comfortable as possible. We provide them with books and study materials. We provide the tuition fee for courses that are made is waived. So basically, you don't need to pay anything to the universities in terms of tuition. We also provide students with Ict allowance. That's very important because you need this to ensure that you have a good and steady internet connection. So it depends on the length of the courses. The longer it takes, the higher the allowance provided by Share. And for the lecturers, we also provide incentives for them because it takes some of their working time to develop these courses. It's not a very easy thing to do, and you need a lot of interactions. So we provide incentives also for the lecturers to take time out of their busy schedule of teaching to create new courses. And we also provide a management or handling fee for the universities to manage all of these courses, including the lecturers and the students that participate in them. Next slide, please. So this is all in a nutshell of how we provide the scholarship grant from the COIL proposal submission. Once it's approved, we will provide an allocation letter for the universities. And we also provide them with a budget request form indicating how many students will participate from each universities. And we do our calculations, how much of the funds is required to run the program. And once it's approved, it will be sent to the universities. Universities will then disperse the funds to the students. And basically, the students take the course once it's complete. There are also administrative responsibilities for universities to report back to us. And that's it. Next slide, please. These are just some of examples of our COIL courses. As I mentioned, we have 2 batches already completed. We're currently in batch 8. It's currently ongoing until the end of September. So these are some of the courses that are taking that are like culinary classes, for example. Students joining in from 2 or 3 universities. I think an average class is around 40 to 50 students in per class. Yeah, and they work not individually or just with their colleagues from the same universities, but they have to work together. One of the beauty of this is that you have to work together with the counterpart universities. So you are forced to interact. Sometimes not just during the classroom, but outside. But I'll leave that to Kevin to give more example of that. Next slide, please. Again, some examples of how the lecturer provides their classes, giving projects to students. I don't know how many. I think it differs how many projects or homeworks that you need to do, but I'm sure that aside from learning in the classroom, you need the students would also need to interact outside of the classroom. So be it using other means of communication such as WhatsApp or Zoom or Teams outside of the classroom is probably required to ensure that the tasks that are given is properly met and submitted to the lecturers to get the credits. Next slide. And once the students completed their courses, finish all of their exams, they will receive a transcript of records from their universities stating how many hours that has been have they take for their course, their grades, and of course the credits that they are earned. This is just a sample of the transcript of records. Sometimes they use the share template, sometimes they use their own. But in the end, it will all be stored under a new platform that we are creating, a digitalized platform. It's called the Digital Credit Transfer System. So it is a complement to the AVEC platform, where the AVEC platform creates the courses. The DCTS records the data of the student and what they have earned during this session, as their course sessions. And both of these platforms will be available for batch 9. The students from batch 9, the lecturers will have the opportunity to test the platforms the first time before we share and submit all of our work to the ASEAN people. I think that's it for me. If you have any questions, please you can just write it down in the chat box, or you can also raise your hand. After this, there will be another presentation by my colleague, by one of the share awardees, Kevin from IPB. My colleague Lydia will also be manning the share booth this afternoon at 4 until 6. So if we don't come around to your question, you can come back a little bit later at 4 o'clock to ask your questions to my colleague Lydia. So I give the floor now to Kevin. Kevin, please.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Arif, and also thank you for Mr. Darren. So I would like to introduce myself. My name is Kevin. I am a scholarship awardee participating in the COIL Share Program Batch 7, and I am currently enrolled as an IPB undergraduate student at IPB University in Bogor. And here it is, my experience as a VCOIL from a student perspective, as previously mentioned by Mr. Darren and Mr. Arif introduced the COIL experience. Next slide, please. All right, I would like to take a moment to ask you to just imagine yourself. What is the first thing that comes into your mind when you heard the word virtual exchange? I'm pretty sure all of you have been familiar with the word exchange, but it is mostly physical ones. And the pandemic has forced us to innovate with something new, that is a virtual exchange. So I'm pretty sure you might be confused and might be a little bit concerned with the word virtual, since it is very much correlated with limitations and also the boundaries that they have. But I'm here to tell you that it is not unlike what I've mentioned. Okay, can you go to the next slide, please? So here's my experience with
3 minutes left. 3 minutes left.
With the COIL course. So I participated in the COIL that held by IPB University and PPIU. It has students from Indonesia and Cambodia, and the courses last for 6 weeks. And through the 6 weeks, can you go to the next slide, please? Through the 6 weeks, I gained many benefits. And here I will convey some of them to you. The first one is the practical learning. I'm very grateful that the lectures are not being held in just one-way communication within the lecturers and the professors to the students. Instead, students are given study cases and also final project. And we are not also that, and also students are being put into teams of different universities. So we are forced to collaborate, and this provides us with a practical learning with a feedback based, and that's one thing that I would like to highlight. Next is the friends and networking. As I have mentioned, we are being put into groups, so we are forced to meet each other and talk to each other. So this ultimately creates bonds between friends, and we are introduced to to the cross-cultural exchange as well as another international exposure. One thing that I would like to share is that previously in the 15th policy dialogue, share policy dialogue in Hanoi, I happened to meet one of my friend from my course. If you can see on the bottom right hand side, it is me presenting, and it's my team, and we managed to meet in a physical manner. So that just proves that even this virtual exchange can ultimately lead to something in a real world bonds, and we can also be mutually connected into a networking space. Third one is the credits earning. One thing that is very great is that through the 6 weeks course, the credits that we gain can be recognized by the home universities. And instead, it is one of the great things that we don't have to take a full semester for gaining such credits. And the fourth one is sort of the supplementary one, that is the incentive for ICT and book materials, which is very great as well, because it motivates us and drives us further to put a lot of more effort into the learning process and also the course. So can you go to the next slide, please? I guess that wraps up my presentation for today. And should you have any more questions that you would like to highlight, ask me regarding my experience, I'm free to feel free to ask me through LinkedIn and also my email. Thank you very much.
Right, thanks. We are open for any questions, if there are any. Please, you may open your video, or unmute your audio, or you can also have. Oh, I've just been informed that we don't have any time anymore. So if there are any messages, any questions that you would like to ask us, please feel free to join us at 4 o'clock this afternoon, where we have a booth opened, and we will be there for at least 2 hours until 6 o'clock. Myself and Lydia will be there to man the booth. Do join us.